thank each of you for being here this morning, and I'd also like to take this time to thank Ms. Henrietta Tucker and Ms. Dorothy Hines for our beautiful flowers in the sanctuary today. They're really beautiful. Thank you very much, ladies. We do appreciate it. Well, as I was preparing my sermon for this day, I struggled with a lot of issues and personal feelings. I felt as though I was not adequate enough to be standing before all of you. I struggled with what I wanted to say. I know what you're thinking. Carol, short of words and things to say. But since this day is about United Methodist Women, what we're about and what we do, I decided on the topic of women in the Bible. God uses ordinary women to impact the lives of others so that He could use them for His purpose. While doing my research and reading about various women in the Bible that God had used, I realized He could use me and He could use each one of you. He can use us all. I was able to focus on areas of my life that need to work and parts of my life where I have potential for growth. Trust me, the devil has been knocking me in left field the whole year. But I'm determined that I'm not going to let Satan win. We all have room to grow. As I studied the Bible and read of these women, I really got excited about how these women displayed obedience, submissiveness, commitment, graciousness, dedication, and worship in difficult times and situations. God was intimately involved in their lives and used them to fulfill His purposes. All we need to do is seek, follow, and trust Him. Well, my first woman is Hannah. She's my lady of obedience. In Hebrew, Hannah means God has favored me. 1 Samuel 1:8 tells us that Hannah was childless and unhappy. She was a young woman married to a man. He loved her tenderly, and she loved him. But he had another wife, as it was common in those times. And he didn't love her as much. But she was remarkably fertile. While Hannah had never had a child, the other wife was surrounded by sons and daughters. She saw her numerous children as her glory, and indeed they were. She thought they should have made her the apple of her husband's eyes, but they didn't. Her husband was deeply in love with his barren wife, Hannah. One can sympathize with this woman's pain over her husband's love for Hannah. Her jealousy can make a woman cruel, and this wife was no exception. She tormented Hannah about her lack of children. The Bible's text says that she provoked Hannah severely, irritating her constantly by mocking Hannah's lack of children. This went on for years, especially at the times that Hannah prayed for children at the holy shrine of Shiloh, about 20 miles north of Jerusalem. One year, when the husband and his two wives were at Shiloh, the husband tried to comfort Hannah. "Aren't I more to you than 10 sons?" he asked. Hannah's response is not recorded, but once again, she presented herself at the shrine and began her prayer. The shrine had seats beside the door, and on one of these seats sat Eli, the shrine's priest. When Hannah began to pray, Eli saw her deep distress, but she prayed silently so that he could not hear her prayer. Why did Hannah pray silently? Well, because she was making a vow to God. At that time, a husband could rescind any vow his wife made if he did it so within a day. Hannah, desperate, did not want this to happen, so she mouthed the words without actually speaking them aloud. What was this vow? To which Hannah's husband might have objected? That if God gave her a son, she would give this son back to God, dedicating him as a Nazarite, a holy man, sworn to serve God all his life. He shall drink neither wine nor intoxicants, and no razor shall touch his head. Verse 11. If Hannah's husband had heard this vow, he would have surely have objected. The boy, after all, would be his son as well as hers. She mouthed the words silently, the priest watching her. He assumed that she was drunk, because there was a fair amount of feasting at festival time. He was outraged that she would approach the shrine intoxicated, and said so, telling her she was making a drunken spectacle of herself. Not so, she replied. She was deeply unhappy, but certainly not drunk. Satisfied, the priest blessed her and prayed that her request might be granted. His words seemed to have had a profound effect on Hannah. She was convinced she could conceive at last. And indeed she did. In due time, she bore a son. Only then did she tell her husband about her vow, as well as she might, because according to the words of the vow, she was obliged to hand over this newborn son to the priest at the shrine. Her husband's reaction could only be imagined. It could not have been favorable. Perhaps to satisfy him, she made a compromise. She would keep the baby until he was weaned, about 3 years old. This would give him a better chance of surviving the separation from his family. Only then would she take him to be given to the priest at Shiloh. This she did. When the time came that the little boy was weaned, she took him to Shiloh, just as she had promised, and dedicated the boy to God's service in a special ceremony. Even at this stage, she could have redeemed her vow by paying a sum of money to the priest at Shiloh, but she didn't choose to do this. She was a woman who knew her own mind, so she stuck to her original intention. At the same time, Hannah made a special prayer of thanksgiving to God, which we know as the Song of Hannah. This song has special significance for Christians, spoken by Mary, the mother of Jesus, and recorded in Luke's Gospel. It's modeled on the Song of Hannah. This was not the end of the story. The Bible records that Hannah used to visit her son at Shiloh every year, taking a special gift that she had made herself, a little linen ephod for the boy, presumably bigger each year. Wearing this garment marked her son as being of priestly status. Hannah's son was Samuel, who became one of the most influential and godly men of the Bible. Hannah was blessed with more children, 3 sons and 2 daughters, none less. There is no other mention of the wife. There are 2 things we should remember from Hannah's story. First, don't give up hope. God is listening. Remember that there's a purpose in everything God does, even if we don't see what it is. Second, kindness or malice. You have a choice. Which one will you choose? The main story is about the special nature of Samuel's birth, but it's also what women can say can be cruel to one another. Hannah had no child. She desperately wants one. The other wife had many children. Does she sympathize with Hannah and pity her pain? No. She just kept rubbing that salt into that wounded heart. You get to choose whether to act with kindness or malice.